I didn't hear. Would you repeat it, but provide, please, straightforward.
The points are two. You see, from Professor Clark's lecture, I understand that Jesus Christ gave his life for the sins of humanity. And the second point is that the death is sort of penalty of sins. Therefore, it implies that you can keep on committing sins and nothing to stop it from you, because the concept of reward and punishment is completely lost if we believe in this thing.
Okay. I think my understanding is that he says it will encourage us to heal sin. Yeah. Claiming that Jesus redeemed us. So we'll commit sins as much as we can.
Again, we're having difficulty. I'm old enough to, in this sort of thing, not to be able to pick up all that is being said, but if I understand the question is, if Jesus died for the sin of the world, does that encourage everybody to sin? Is that the question? Well, we have the definitive answer, of course, in Romans. That's impossible, because if a Christian obeys the Lord Jesus Christ and is pardoned for his sins, the Christian dies to sin. We are buried, therefore, Paul says, with baptism through him into death, that like as Christ was raised from the dead, and so on. And the Christian cannot continue in sin if he accepts the blood of Christ, because he dies to sinning, and that's why he comes to him.
Thank you. The next, and again briefly and to the point.
This is directed to Professor Clark. I refer to Matthew 27, verse 46-47. The statement reads, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. And then further on it says, that is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Just one thing, it's the only verse that is left in the original Aramaic or Greek. Now, that is why it intrigues me. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. The word in Greek for
point,
God, yes, is Elohim. There is no such God, and there is no proof anywhere that in that time, in the time of Jesus, that Eli meant my God. Because why did the Jews...
Excuse me. No speeches, no many speeches, no preliminary remarks.
Okay.
Put the question directly.
Okay, the question is, then it goes on to say, then some of the bystanders hearing this said, what is this man saying? Is he meaning Elijah? That means the Jews did not understand what Eli meant.
Again, I have to warn you before cutting you off.
What is the question?
Put your question directly in one sentence.
Okay.
What is the question?
The question is, my proposition is Eli does not mean my God. Eli is a name, because I've asked synagogues and I've asked several professors of Hebrew, and they say Eli can be a name of a person.
Okay, Professor Clark.
My understanding is he said Eli, and Eli doesn't necessarily mean my God.
We will have two more questions. Only two more questions.
Again, I think the question is difficult in this context to answer. Jesus is quoting from an Old Testament passage, and in that Old Testament passage, we then can understand what Jesus was talking about. And I would recommend that the party who has the question just turn to that passage in the Old Testament, and I think it perfectly answers your question.
Thank you. The next questioner. I hope there will be no need to cut off any questioners. Please.
I first would like to thank Mr. Deedat for his very excellent and intelligent exposition of the question.
And now the question.
I'd like to ask Professor Clark about what he thinks of the nature of Jesus, and whether he was God or the Son of God or the messenger of God. Because in his talk, he said that when Jesus was about to bring Lazarus from the dead, he said, thank you, so that you may believe, so that they may believe that you have sent me. He's talking to God. So, okay. And also on the cross, in Professor Clark's exposition, he's saying, Father, in thy hands I commit my soul. Now, Isn't that enough evidence for Professor Clark to convince him that the relationship between Jesus and God is the relationship between a God and the messenger?
Okay, thank you. The question was directed to Mr. Deedat or to Professor Clark. Just make it clear. Okay.
Jesus, when he said, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit," he was speaking in the spirit of all that he had done through a long time ministry, in which he said he did nothing except what he saw his Father do, that the words he spoke were not his own, but the words he heard his Father speak, and he claimed only to be relating to God as his Father.
Okay. Thank you. We're really running out of time. We might allow 2 or 3 questions more. The first one.
In 1974-75 on television, Professor Anderson, who ironically taught Mohammedan law in the Council of Legal Education, London, and University of London, called Muslim...
brother, would you please put your question directly?
It is.
Yeah.
And pagan, because they did not believe in Trinity. May I ask Dr. Floyd what is his view about Muslims, as they do not believe and recognize Trinity, as well as the crucifixion of Prophet Jesus? Do you consider Muslims as pagan or the people of the book, given also the fact that at the time of the Prophet many pious Christians freely accepted Islam?
Okay, thank you. Professor Clark.
When a Muslim doesn't believe in Trinity and the crucifixion,
Well, it really doesn't matter what I think. It just matters what the book says. And as we've been looking in the book, I think we can come to whatever private opinions we may have. But I think of my brother Ahmed as of one whom in the New Testament was mentioned as one who was not far from the kingdom.
Okay, the next question. No injection from the floor, please. The next speaker. Would you please come close so that you could be...
Assalamu alaikum. My question is direct to Brother Ahmed Deedat. Well, day before yesterday, on Friday, I attended his meeting in Southall, and he was speaking about Prophet Muhammad's arrival is mentioned in the Bible. Therefore, why Christians, theologians don't talk about...
if your question, I'm sorry for injection here. If your question, brother, relate... Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Just a minute, please.
Muhammad's arrival is mentioned in the Bible.
In fairness to you...
Why Christians, theologians don't talk about him?
Just a minute, please. In fairness to you and to everybody else and to the brother who was turned down, the question is not relevant to the topic. Would you please move on? Would you please move on and let the next speaker ask the question? Relevant to the topic? Go ahead briefly. Just put it... Professor Clark.
True gospel of Jesus Christ, which is called the gospel of Barnabas.
Okay, would you... Thank you for your question. I drew the question out of order. It's not relevant to the topic. Would you move on, please? Would you move on? Would you move on, Jazakallah? Next speaker. Would the next speaker please ask his question? We have to be fair and firm. Am I doing something wrong? I'd like to get indication of the way I'm conducting questions. Am I unfair? Go ahead. Briefly, brother, please.
I would like to say that I'm grateful for this opportunity, and my questions are actually two. Number one, if the Quran is indeed from God, does it contradict itself in as much as it says,
okay.
Therefore, Jesus was born, he died, and he rose again. The second question, if God...
Oh, I'm sorry. The rules of the game is to ask one question and get the back so that other people will have a chance. Right. Thank you. Now the question is directed to Mr. Deedat. Mr. Deedat.
Thank you.
The verse in question is وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيَّ يَوْمَ وُلِدْتُ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. which translated means, so peace is on me, the day that I was born, the day that I die, and the day that I shall be raised to life again. The day that I die, it is not that I died. It's not died, it's in the future.
We have time for a maximum of 2